Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at Spunky Old Broad 1 or reach out to me on our website at spunkyoldbroad.com. And now, back to the show. What a fun show we have for you today. My guest is Maggie Hunts. She's an award-winning stand-up comic and entertainer who opened for Mary Tyler Moore's Woman of the Year celebration in New York City. Maggie's mother is still mad because she dropped out of corporate America to start her own company. Maggie's had type 1 diabetes for over 35 years, and she jokes and sings so you can raise your spirits, not your blood sugar. Maggie's giving all of us a free ebook filled with recipes, pictures, and tons of ideas on how we get to do that. So, welcome, Maggie.
Hi, Gail. Thank you for having me on your show. It's so fabulous. I'm so excited.
Well, thank you. I started out as an entertainer, a singer and a dancer, not a comedian, but a singer and a dancer. Yeah, that was way back when. And how did you start singing and joking about a medical condition like diabetes? Because it is a serious disease. I know my husband was diabetic, and it was not a fun experience. So tell us.
Well, it's interesting that you ask because so often people say, Maggie, don't you know that diabetes is serious? And obviously, you knew through your husband just how serious and up and down it could be. But I feel like we don't need any help being stressed or worried about diabetes. What we need to do is relax and lighten up about it. And quite frankly, I was shocked, more shocked than anyone, that I kept getting ideas for humor and songs about diabetes. And I remember looking up at the sky like that's where we think God is and thinking, that's what you want me to do? But that's what works so beautifully. And then people relax and they can hear good information on how to feel better.
But people laughing, it's one of the best therapies you can ever have.
Right.
So the fact that you can joke about it and the fact that people like what you're saying and react to it in a positive manner, I mean, there's nothing better than that. So,
Great. Well, we agree and so do audiences. It's really funny. It's like sometimes people in the medical profession get it, sometimes they don't, but all the patients are grateful for it. You're right.
well, was one of the reasons you were chosen for Mary Tyler Moore is because she was a type 1 diabetic? I mean, a lot of people don't know that she was a type 1 diabetic. She was on a very monitored plan all of her life. And, she had to be very careful about what she did. So is that one of the reasons that you got chosen for that?
What's so interesting about Mary Tyler Moore is that you're exactly right, Gail. She was in the middle of Dick Van Dyke Show when she got diagnosed, and she wasn't that far into it. And so she was the epitome of, I have to take care of myself so that my body works, and then I can do everything else I want. We can be unstoppable. We don't have to be stopped by diabetes. And so she worked really hard, and she was very strong working with the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, the JDRF. And then I was lucky enough to sing and joke for them. And then they said, oh, you need to open for her when she got her Woman of the Year award. And that's how I got to meet one of my idols and one of so many of our idols.
So what else can you tell us about Mary Tyler Moore? What was she like in everything that she did? I mean, in her work ethic, her life ethic, because she did have some struggles personally.
Yes, she did. And really, to me, that's really true to life. That's what I liked about her so much. Because, when you meet somebody who's an idol and you think, they could be an egomaniac or whatever, she was none of that. She was as lovely in person as you hope she would be. And I remember when I met her and she said, how long have you had diabetes? And it's been 35 years now, but it was 18. And she said, oh, you're just a puppy. And I remember when she looked at me and I was like, talk back to her. Mary Tyler Moore just asked you a question, because I was so thrilled. And then somebody else like fanned all over her. They were so excited. And she just didn't pay attention to that. She paid attention to me and looked right at me. And I really thought, she's not in love with her own celebrity. She's a real person. And I was grateful for that.
Why do you think comedy and your entertaining about diabetes is so helpful to so many people?
That's a great question, because so often we think we just need more drugs or more technology. And actually, there's a lot of technology and there's a lot of things that are available. But if we're all afraid and, like bunched up and our heads are under the covers and we're all nervous and afraid to do anything, then we can't use the tools that we have or the things that are available. And it's so funny, because if I start off singing, a friend had suggested that to me. And so if I start off, the best is yet to come, and I'll tell you how, then people are like, oh, well, this is not going to be your average boring medical conversation. And then they open up their minds and they can let good information in. And I watch it happen. It's so exciting. Thanks for asking.
Wow, that is great. So, diabetes is well, they've called it the silent killer because people don't know they have it, and then they go into all kinds of situations. So what happens? I mean, you've talked to a lot of people. How does someone get out from under the covers when you're afraid to find out if you even have diabetes? I mean, most people, when they have blood tests, when they go to the doctors, that this will either show up or it won't. But I mean, are there people who just refuse to acknowledge this?
Well, that's true. And it's so interesting. Sometimes, we get afraid, like the diagnosis is going to do something to us. But actually, the concern with diabetes is what you're saying. It's having it and not knowing it. Instead of the diagnosis is the good news, because then you can do something about it and feel better. So often, if you've got symptoms like you're tired, well, who's not tired? Everybody's tired, or you're thirsty. Well, it's the summer. Everybody's thirsty, or you're peeing a lot. Well, there's lots of reasons, because you were so thirsty, you may be going to the restroom a lot. But those are actually signs of high blood sugar. And if you can bring your blood sugar down, which we can talk about how easy that can be to do, then you feel so much better. You get your energy back. You feel so good. That's why the good news is finding out, having the diagnosis, and then you can make the corrections that make a huge difference in your life.
Well, it's interesting because you say there are key food tricks that help us all be more healthy. And yet I've talked to some people who have diabetes and they're saying, no, some of the advice you get is not correct. And, you have to monitor yourself so very carefully, and you can just do one thing wrong and it spikes everything. And I mean, it's almost like it's a hour to hour project. And of course, I was married to a guy that thought, well, gee, you just eat what you want, then stick yourself with insulin and boy, you're going to be fine. Well, no, that's not the case. But that was really tough. And when I would buy foods that were correct, and I didn't come home with what he wanted, I heard about it, and then he went out to buy them. So tell us what the key food tricks are.
You bring up such a great point, and I just want to say that there's no one answer for everybody, because we're all different and our bodies are different too. And at different times in my life, I've done different things that have been successful. And a lot of people believe that, just match the insulin to the food and you could eat whatever you want. But the trick with that is that insulin makes you hungry and it stores the very fat it told you to eat. So if you're taking lots of insulin to eat lots of food, that cycle continues. So that's why what you want to do is look for food that won't cause you to need a lot of insulin. And I know how your husband, felt, because you want to be able to eat whatever you want. But there's so many great foods. I don't believe in suffering. And there are so many yummy foods that you could use if you're smart about it, because with insulin, you count the carbohydrates, not just the sugar. So there could be lots of chemical sugar in there, but the carbs are still really high. So you don't want to do that. You want to limit your carbs. So instead of having a big bowl of mashed potatoes, have that beautiful cauliflower puree. And I've got a recipe I can give your audiences on how to make it. It's so easy. So yes, you have to do a little bit of cooking yourself, but you can easily make changes into foods you really like that won't send your sugar flying.
Yeah, I could just hear him now. He's not with us any longer, but I could hear him now saying, cauliflower, not on your life. I want my mashed potatoes. But that's what
right.
cost,
And don't tell him.
yeah, but that's what cost him his life, because he didn't do what he was supposed to do. So what are some of the other key food tricks?
Well, the real key is that you have to fall in love with vegetables. I mean, you just do. And a lot of people don't know how to cook vegetables. And so I made a whole holiday food survival guide with lots of different vegetables in there to show people how to cook them. It's so easy. You're just washing, chopping, and sauteing, and it's really, really simple. And then if you have a whole plate full of veggies that are really prepared yummy, then you don't feel like you're missing anything because you've taken off the bread or you've taken off the full potato and you got a quarter or a half of a sweet potato instead. You don't have to suffer, but you have to be smart about it. You're right. Because if you don't make the changes, you will feel lousy and it will eventually win. But I've been 35 years. I've had no complications, and I do watch it really closely. You're right.
So what was the turning point for you? I mean, what caused you to change your life and improve how you were taking care of yourself? I mean, was there a big incident, or was it just an awareness, or how did you come to say, I got to wake up and do this?
It's a great question because I thought I was doing a good enough job. I thought, I'm doing fine. It's good enough. I'm fine. What's a little episode every now and again? But then it was one time because I remember I was driving my daughter to, we were driving somewhere, and on the radio came a teenager who said what the worst day of her life was. And she said to me, "Don't you know mine?" And I was like, I held my breath. I'm about to hear it. I knew. And I said, "No, baby, what was the worst day of your life?" And she said when she was 8, she came home from school. She's looking for me, threw her backpack down, "Ma, Ma." And then she couldn't find me. And I was unconscious. And she shook me. And she thought her mother never was going to wake up. And then when you really go low, your liver can kick in. So your blood sugar is super low. Then your body detects that and your liver can kick in and give you sugar and then can bring you back. So it's like 20 minutes later, half an hour later, and I look up and all of a sudden I see the neighbors are there, the paramedics are there, and I see my daughter white as a sheet. And I thought, okay, Maggie, you are not doing a good enough job. And very often, if you can't do something for yourself, you do it for the ones you love. And that was what had me search for answers to find the truth on what could help me.
That is true. In fact, but I think my husband used to say, if you drank a glass of orange juice, that kind of put you back into the zone. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he did. And but yeah, I mean, you just never know. Yet I knew someone else who monitored themselves like a scientist. I mean, it was like every minute of every day, and yet he did not survive. And so it's a very complicated disease, and it's one that isn't easily controlled or understood.
Well, there's a lot to it, that's true, but we can't get too overwhelmed by it, even though I know there's a lot of factors. I just need to comment on the orange juice, because if your sugar let's say perfect sugar is 100, and liquid sugar, like a glass of orange juice, that is going to send your sugar to the moon and back. So if he's going a little bit low, like if you're 70, that's considered low blood sugar. That's only 30 points. if I ate a piece of bread, that could throw my sugar 100 points. So you're right. It's like living on a balance beam. It's real skinny. It's easy to go low. It's easy to go high. But what you want to do is be as stable as you can. And I always thought of myself as, I'm a free spirit. Don't tell me I need to test. Don't tell me I need to have a schedule. But actually, when you do that, you feel so much better. And there's lots of people to help. You can go to a diabetes educator. You can go to an endocrinologist. With diabetes, you have to be smart. You have to learn about it. And then, yeah, there are some things you need to do, like eat a diet that's not super high in carbs, but that is yummy, so you're happy and you're not suffering. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Not easy to follow, though. I'm not
Well,
an ice
sometimes
cream.
that's true.
I'm not an ice cream person. In fact, I was somewhere this weekend, and the person I was with was saying, "Oh, she loves ice cream, and let's go get some ice cream." And I don't like ice cream, but my husband loved ice cream, and so that was one of the things that I wouldn't buy, and then he would go out and get it, because he
Yeah.
wanted it and I don't eat it. But there's got to be a bunch of things that your audiences want to know, but they're too embarrassed to ask. What are some of the most unbelievable questions that you've gotten, Maggie?
Well, it's interesting because very often people, they after my daughter, and I just want to say I was really grateful to that day, and that's when I found solutions. And a girlfriend had recommended an insulin pump to me. So I use an insulin pump, and I have what is called a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. And that's something you just put in once every 10 days, and they have this automatic shoot thing so you don't even feel it. And it tells you your blood sugar every minute of every day. You know what your sugar is. These tools are unbelievable. And so when I first got them and people knew that I was on an insulin pump, I thought a needle was attached to you all the time, but it's not. It's like this, it's like a quarter of an inch little plastic tube that's inside of you. That's it. And then I wear like a little pagery flat looking thing. It looks like a small cell phone, and it feeds in the insulin that I need. So when you eat something, you put in your number of carbs and it tells you, it gives you automatically the insulin. So you're not taking shots all the time. And what's so interesting is people always had this look on their face. And so in the audience, I said, what is it you want to ask? And they said, how do you have sex? I said, what? And they said, how do you have sex? And I'm like, that's it. That's the question everybody wants to know. And it's usually a woman who's brave enough to ask me. And I thought that was so funny. And I said, well, it depends. What kind of sex do you want to have? If you want to have the brief, lovely sort of sex, you just disconnect like you're going to take a shower, set it down, and have a good time. But if you want to have the long, lovely, take a nap, wake up, and go at it again sort of sex, then you order the pump with the really long tubing, and I hold it up, and they laugh and have a cow.
Wow. I had wanted to get a pump for my husband, but they said he didn't qualify for it. But yeah, I think those pumps are fantastic. And so that's an adorable question. And I can see why people would want to know because it's like when they see somebody who's a paraplegic or something and they say, how do you have sex? Or how could you have children? Or things like that. What are some of the other questions that you're asked?
Well, often people want to know, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you keep these numbers and not go crazy? And you know what? Sometimes I do go crazy. And that's why I started the It's a Sweet Life Now podcast and wrote the book because, I just feel like these are real questions. Like, how do I do this in real life? How do you do this? And I was never very much of a cook. I would cook a little bit. And I thought, this Jewish American princess is going to cook? Okay, let's try it. But then when somebody else showed me that there was how to make the cauliflower puree, and when somebody else told me about this almond yogurt that's thick and creamy, and if you mix that in with little bits of Lily's chocolate that has stevia in it, and stevia is a plant. I don't like the powdered one so much, but the liquid one is so good, and you can get vanilla flavored or chocolate flavored. So you make a beautiful coffee, and you add in some collagen protein powder, so you get protein without a lot of carbs. and you blend it together with a little chocolate stevia and maybe cacao powder. Oh my gosh, you are so not suffering. It's fantastic. So you just have to know how to substitute these fantastic foods in so that you don't suffer. And that's why I wrote it down and made a holiday food survival guide that I'll give your audience later so everybody can have a copy. And it's 35 pages. It's an ebook you could just download for free. And it's my pleasure so people can feel better.
Well, your podcast is it's a Sweet Life Now, and your Facebook is um, it's a Sweet Life Now. So, and your website is a Sweet Life Now. So, is it referring to sweet foods, or I mean, how do you handle all the fattening sweet foods that are everywhere?
That's the thing. That's what's so hard. It's like a friend of ours, to answer your ice cream question, wanted to give my husband a cake and ice cream. And I was like, no, he's not eating that. You're not helping. And it's the same thing when you go into a drugstore and you see all this candy on the shelves. It's like, one of the key things is don't walk around hungry. If you walk around hungry, that's when, a Diet Coke and a triple cheeseburger and fries sounds like a good idea because you're starving. But if you don't let yourself walk around hungry, and that's why I had to write the Holiday Food Survival Guide, so that, that's either holidays with loved ones where all we're doing, it's like a carbohydrate festival, and I just want people to know you can enjoy love your family, your friends, and the holidays without a sugar coma and without gaining weight. And that's why I put all those down because, you can fall in love with vegetables. You can fill your plate high. There's so many yummy foods that you can eat. And I love to, can I give you a parody that I love to do about food?
Sure, of course.
I love to take the words to songs and switch them for diabetes. And it just gives us all a better outlook to keep going because diabetes isn't hard for a day or a week. It's day in and day out, like you said, that makes it so tricky. So instead of I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me, I love to sing I'm in the mood for food, simply because it's near me. Funny, but when it's near me, I'm in the mood for food. And that's what's true. That's what makes it so hard when there's all this food all around us. That's why you want to be prepared. Be hungry. If I'm going somewhere, I bring food with us so that we've got food that's yummy, that takes care of our body. Otherwise, I know my sugar's going up, my sugar's going down, and then I got to adjust to it. That's the hard part.
Well, I just came back from 2 weeks in Greece, which included a week on a ship, and I'm probably the only person who lost weight on a cruise.
You're
But
awesome.
yeah, I was very fortunate. But yeah, it's really interesting all of the things that go into making who you are and how you lead your life, and it's very interesting. And we're coming down to our first break, and I want to come back and talk about some of the things that you do in your musical and comedic agenda. I mean, I'd love to know the kinds of shows you do and where you do them and why people hire you. And I just think it's fascinating and I think it's wonderful. So we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But, when you talk about these parodies, I have a friend who takes songs and then adds his words to them and they become a parody. And of course, everybody knows the show. I think that's so brilliant. It's not something I can do at all, but he does it extremely well and people just adore it. So I can just see you on stage doing all of this. And I'm going to be interested to know whether or not you do like a 30-minute bit or an hour bit. And when you give your speeches, what's the combination of humor versus singing and entertaining and all of that? Because that's, I think, a big part of all of that. But, I have to say, I don't consider vegetables yummy, but the way you say it, you just got to have some yummy vegetables. I mean, yeah, You make it sound very good. And of course, you and Oprah have something in common. She loves her cauliflower and she has it in all kinds of, she's got what, the pizza crusts with the cauliflower, and she's got
Yes.
the mashed potatoes that are cauliflower. And so, you and she have a lot in common there because she sure does like her cauliflower. However, I had never heard of cauliflower bread. So that's a new one on me. And I'll have to think about that a little bit because I'm not sure how I feel about it. So, anyway, my guest is Maggie Hunts. Her website is sweetlifenow.com. She has a Facebook page with It's a Sweet Life Now. Her podcast is A Sweet Life Now. And but her Twitter is Maggie, and that's Maggie Hunts, and that's plural Hunts. So a lot going on there. So stick with us, and we'll be back with Maggie in just a few minutes.